As we all know, Grand Moff Tarkin was killed at the end of the first Star Wars movie, and subsequently his death marked the beginning of the downfall of the Empire. Many people have reasoned that the biggest loss for the Empire that day wasn't the Death Star, but was in fact Tarkin himself, losing what was effectively one of the Empire's greatest military tacticians, who was willing to go to brutal lengths to ensure the eradication of the rebellion. But what if Tarkin survived the Death Star's destruction? What if he listened to his officers and left the station when the weakness was discovered? Would the Rebel Alliance have destroyed the second Death Star and ultimately kill the Emperor if Tarkin was still a threat? This is what we'll be taking a look at today. What if Tarkin survived? My name is Connor, and welcome to Star Wars Central. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you guys so much for the support that you've shown me recently. The comments, the messages, even some Twitter DMs that you've been sending have been fantastic, and it really does help motivate me to make more videos for you guys. Also, we just hit 12,000 subscribers, so thank you guys so much for your support. Anyway, let's get started with today's video. So, Tarkin died in A New Hope. It's the classic ending we all remember. In the end, it was his arrogance that finally killed him, believing that the battle station was the ultimate power and that his strategy had been perfect. But of course, that's not the point of this video. You know how Tarkin died. The topic we're taking a look at today is what if Tarkin survived? Let's say, for instance, when Tarkin was warned of the Death Star's vulnerability with the exhaust port, he had evacuated. That way, even if the Death Star was destroyed, he would still be alive to lead operations against the rebels. Now, what effect would this have had on the Star Wars universe? Well, firstly, the Empire's response to the rebels would have been far more severe. After the Death Star was destroyed, there was a brief moment where the rebels were, for the most part, contained on the moon of Yavin 4. During this time, the Empire attempted to invade the moon and prevent the rebellion from escaping. Obviously, the rebellion escaped, and this was in part due to the Empire's sheer disorganization. When the Death Star was destroyed, not only did the Empire lose Grand Moff Tarkin, but it also lost a very large portion of its senior command staff. Regional governors, Imperial security directors, you name it, they probably lost it. This meant that when it came time for a well-planned operation, there wasn't really anyone nearby to do the job. Sure, there were other regional governors and admirals around, but by the time the Empire managed to recover and reorganize itself, it was far too late. The Rebel Alliance had escaped the moon and would continue to operate throughout the galaxy. Now, if Tarkin had survived the Death Star, you can bet the rebellion's retreat from Yavin 4 would have been far more costly. Tarkin was famous for using tactics that incurred heavy troop and material losses. He was basically happy to pay any price to get the job done. Which is why I would argue the Rebel Alliance would have had a much more difficult time escaping Yavin 4. Also in the Star Wars lore, Tarkin was the sole contact between the Maw installation and the Empire. Tarkin sent Admiral Natazi Dala, basically his girlfriend, to oversee the Maw installation, and in doing so ensured that only he truly knew its purpose and location. Because of this, when Tarkin died, Admiral Dala was completely unaware. It was not until after the destruction of the second Death Star that Dala even discovered that Tarkin had been killed. Now, if Tarkin had survived the destruction of the first Death Star, it is very possible he could have instructed Dala to use the superweapons being developed and stored at the Maw installation. Superweapons like the Sun Crusher Death Star prototype and the Orbital Night Cloak. If these had been used against the galaxy, the public opinion of the Rebel Alliance may have changed. For example, if the people realized the Empire was targeting them because of the actions of the rebels, then there is a good chance they'd stop liking the rebels. Of course, in the Star Wars lore, the effect of this wouldn't be too severe. The Rebel Alliance was already a very controversial movement, even having multiple groups inside the Alliance itself. Whilst they would get less support from certain worlds, they would probably still get the support they needed. It still wouldn't stop Tarkin from using the weapons though, and the death toll of the Galactic Civil War would have been much, much higher. And finally, if Tarkin survived, would the Emperor have been killed in Return of the Jedi, and would the Empire have fallen? Well, the short answer to this is no, but of course I'm gonna go into more detail. To be clear, the Emperor in the end would still probably have died. After all, Anakin Skywalker was still the chosen one, and he still had some balancing to do. But as for the Empire, with Grand Moff Tarkin in control, the Empire would probably not have fractured like it did in the Star Wars lore. In the Star Wars lore, when Palpatine died, the Moffs quickly went from fighting the Rebel Alliance and the New Republic to fighting each other. It was basically a whole load of Imperial warlords killing each other for control of the Empire and their respective regions. Now, if Tarkin was around, this would not have happened. Tarkin was the de facto head and leader of the Moffs. In Palpatine's absence, they answered to him and the ruling council. And considering the heavy losses the rebels suffered at Endor, it's quite possible the Empire could have bounced back and prevented the birth of the New Republic. It's quite possible the Empire could have bounced back and prevented the birth of the New Republic, effectively pulling a complete U-turn on the Star Wars lore we've known for all these years. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Tell me in the comments below, on a scale of 1 to 10, how badass do you think Tarkin is? And what do you think would have happened in the Star Wars lore if he survived the destruction of the first Death Star? I just want to say again, thank you so much for your support, guys. The comments and messages recently really have been fantastic. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time, and may the Force be with you.